And welcome back. Time for a Capital Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat, there are probably some people out there who never want to hear the words fiscal cliff again, but we're not done talking about it, and we need to talk about it. Some of the House, of course, voted for the fiscal cliff late on New Year's Day. What does the vote mean for this country, do you think?
Well, you know, 257 votes yes. That breaks down 172 Democrats and 85 Republicans in favor, 16 Democrats against, 151 Republicans against. The leadership on the Republican side was split, with the House Speaker and recent vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan in favor, and then other House leaders, including our own James Lankford from Oklahoma City, against the legislation. What does it mean? We'll find out, but it means increased taxes for the people with the most money available for investment. You know, the upper income folks above $450,000 a year. The Bush era, this is kind of interesting. The Bush era income tax, though, are now the permanent law of the land, meaning until the next time it's revisited. But that's actually kind of intriguing outcome. So basically, the roughly half of Americans, other than the top 1% or so, the rest of those Americans who do pay federal income taxes, and of course you got to remember that's a 50-50 proposition, right. They now have built in the income tax levy they had become accustomed to. That's kind of significant. On the upside, from a conservative perspective, everybody's payroll taxes are going to go up 2%, not because of the fiscal cliff right. deal, but because that was an issue that they left alone that had been agreed upon in earlier budget negotiations. And that, you know, an average guy or gal, 40s, 50s, 60s, $1,000 or so impact a year on their income. Yes, thanks. The alternative minimum tax was fixed. Also, something you could score as a plus. Now, for all of that, the tinkering with the possibility of charitable deductions, shrinking the amount that the wealthy can deduct from their taxes, may have an interesting impact on charitable organizations in what's, you know, continuing to be a tough time economically for a lot of people in the country. No real spending discipline to speak of. In fact, some people project as much as a $4 trillion increase in spending over the next many years. Now, we'll see, others say it's as low as a few $100 million a year, but over time, right. it's certainly a spending increase at this point. Retention of a lot of the existing tax credits that people thought might get tinkered with. The House and Senate will have 60 days to deal with the sequestration, the automatic spending cuts, and that's where Congressman Lankford is already spending a lot of his energy as head of the policy committee now, which I think is the 5th highest ranking position in the House, and he told me yesterday that that was something he'd be working on. Debt will continue to climb. Last thought on that, you know, once upon a time, debt was a way that the federal government leveraged infrastructure improvements and, for that matter, financed wars. Both of those fair criticisms or merely observations, depending on your perspective. Now, debt is financing ongoing federal spending. That's a concern. That's not FDR kind of stuff. It's not recovery oriented, it's ongoing expenditures. So that's a concern. So we've got a lot to say grace over still.
So how does this affect the paychecks, bottom line? How does it affect the paychecks of Oklahomans?
Well, we'll see. We already touched on the 2% yes. on the payroll, and that's the average guy or gal. That's the most important thing in the near term. Spending reductions are still likely. So then the question becomes, what does that mean, for example, on the defense side, if there's significant cuts? Even if it's not at the sequestration level, what kind of effect might that have on tinker and so forth? This has been described as Glenn Hubbard, who I knew in the Pete DuPont campaign years ago, and Tim Kaine in National Affairs, described what just happened as politically rational and economically perverse. I thought it was a provocative use of 4 words. It's bad economics but probably most of the people, the way they voted, come out of this okay politically, at least in the near term. So let's watch for a lot of things, including the possibility of taxation on the value of the health insurance that many employees receive through their companies. That's now going to be reported on your W-2 for the first time. And the suspicion is that's going to be an area that the government will look at for possible taxation. That's enough for now. Yep. It's a gloomy picture, but we didn't drop precipitously. Maybe we're on that glide we've talked about.
That's right. Okay. You can read more about these and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great Saturday.